Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
Okay, there are things that make me happy on the radio, and one of them is when I get joined by the inspiring, effective, and indefatigable leader of the North Carolina Dems, Anderson Clayton. Anderson, welcome back.
Thanks for having us, Edwin. You're too kind to us always, but thank you for that introduction.
So what's going on in North Carolina?
We're pulling full steam ahead right now, trying to make sure that we keep a Republican out of the U.S. Senate in North Carolina. And Roy Cooper has been campaigning across the state. He's doing right now a Make Stuff Cost Less tour. And for folks asking what the simplified message that Democrats are trying to put out this year, I think Roy Cooper's got a good one for them. And also making sure that we're getting out the state, across the state, for our state Supreme Court race with Justice Anita Earls, because we have a lot of opportunities in North Carolina to make gains to take back seats on the ballot that we're going to need for years to come in the state.
And, you will never, I know this about you, you will never take a single vote for granted. But it looks like you are doing a fabulous job. I mean, the pollsters and the folks who rate Democrat chances, and Republican chances say Roy Cooper looks pretty good right now.
Well, you got to give that credit to the good old man Roy Cooper himself, for someone who's been in public service in North Carolina for 45 years in this state. I mean, from the state Senate now to the U.S. Senate, he's going to have one heck of a legacy in North Carolina of being somebody that's always stood up against Republicans who are trying to be too extreme for the state of North Carolina. And that's what we're finding right now. I mean, people that are trying to gut health insurance and coverage for people across our state, over 1 million people are being impacted right now by what Republicans passed last year with the sort of Trump's big, beautiful bill or whatnot. And we're seeing those effects. And I just think that folks right now are feeling it in their pocketbooks too, especially.
Oh my gosh. The impact of that terrible legislation, the impact of the illegal tariffs, the impact of his illegal war, all of those are piling up on ordinary Americans.
No, you're right. But you're right about we're not taking one single vote for granted. I just got done. My cell phone service might be a little bit spotty, but I'm out here today in Catawba County. We're out here canvassing with Park Inglefield, who's a 31-year-old woman who's running to take on a 75-year-old Republican incumbent in my state legislature right now. And she's somebody who's been on the ground and is just a good organizer. And we've got those folks in all 170 legislative seats across the state in North Carolina. And it just goes to show how serious I think grassroots organizers and volunteers have taken the charge to make sure that we're contesting every single race that we possibly can on a ballot in 2026, because you never know where gains are going to happen, especially in a state like North Carolina.
Well, they're not going to happen where you don't have a candidate and you're not asking people to vote for you, for sure. So
Amen.
What you do,
Amen.
Yeah. So forgive me, I don't have the county map of North Carolina in my head. Where is Catawba County?
It's in the western part of the state. So when you're looking at
so you're in the mountains?
In the mountains where Hurricane Helene and where we saw sort of a torrential downpour of some of the worst natural disasters in 2024. We saw Hurricane Helene come through and ravage western North Carolina. Sort of that Catawba County was also involved in that, and in that mix of those 35 counties that were affected by that.
Hasn't that traditionally been Republican turf?
Western North Carolina for the last few decades has definitely been Republican leaning, and I think that it's just important for Democrats, right, to show up everywhere that we can. And we've got candidates this year, and I think places this year that Republicans have typically held that are more willing to listen to our party than they ever have been before because of what's happening from Trump's chaos.
Yeah, and is there a state legislative gerrymander you have to overcome?
North Carolina is the most gerrymandered state in the country, and so we've got an uphill battle, which is why we're focused on our state Supreme Court race this year, because we know that when Democrats held the state Supreme Court in North Carolina, we repealed partisan and racial gerrymandering and made it illegal to do it. And a Republican state Supreme Court came back in 2023 and reversed that court's decision, made partisan and racial gerrymandering legal again, and so we have the most gerrymandered congressional maps in the state right now and state legislative maps in the country right now.
Okay. But you do not sound daunted by this.
I think that Democrats in North Carolina have had a plan, and I know that, Edwin, I've talked your ear off about it before, but just for folks listening to this who don't know, North Carolina has a lot of power to give back to the nation when we're thinking about the future of the Democratic Party here. And one of the things that we've been really focused on is taking back our courts, and it's why I talk a lot about our Supreme Court Justice Anita Earls, who's going to be on the ballot this year, because we completed step one of taking back our courts in 2024. We reelected a Democratic Supreme Court Justice with Allison Riggs. We've got to do the same thing again in 26. And in 2028, I've got 3 Republican seats that will be up on the North Carolina State Supreme Court, and we can repeal partisan racial gerrymandering again before we get to 2030 into a new census. And I think that's really important, because folks right now are looking at, congressional leadership in the South and Black Democrats all across the South that are losing that congressional representation because of the fact that we saw the Supreme Court gut parts of the Voting Rights Amendment, and just thinking about how that's going to impact our ability to have congressional power again. And North Carolina is definitely a state where we're looking at, over the next 2 cycles, being able to give back at least 4 or 5 of those seats to the Democratic Party. And we fully expect those to be in some majority districts that we want to make sure we've got that leadership again in. And one of those being NCO1, where we've got Don Davis's seat that's up this year, which is a historically congressional district that's always been a majority-minority district, and one that Republicans have tried to gerrymander out, one of the last Black male Democrats that I've got right now in Congress from North Carolina. So we're trying to protect his seat this year, but we've got a plan to end gerrymandering in North Carolina altogether. And so we've got some hard cycles that we're going to go through, but I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I know Republicans do too.
All right. If you're listening to this, if you're listening to Anderson Clayton talk about how North Carolina is moving in the right direction and can contribute to the whole country. Look, I know you guys who are listening reached into your wallets and helped when this was the fight we were having in Wisconsin. So, look up NC Dems, the North Carolina Dems online. It's not hard to find them, and maybe do the same thing. Help share the wealth here. It's going to help. It's really going to help. Sorry about that.
I think the best bang for your buck you'll get is in the state of North Carolina this year, because we've got the most important U.S. Senate race in the country. And then what I just said about our state Supreme Court, the opportunities are endless in the South, and we have to, Anita Earls, the justice that I was talking about, she's got a really great saying. She tells people that she was from an era of the civil rights movement where everybody across the country leaned into their pockets to help free the South, and we've got to be able to do that again this year. And so that's something that I feel like is really motivating for a lot of people.
Anderson, I talked to one of your colleagues, the Democratic chair in Indiana, and she said to me, she gets asked to speak a lot. And she says, well, I'll say a few words, Republican words. And then she stands up in front of the audience and says Doge and Iran and Medicare cuts. And she gets cheered all over the state for her few Republican words. Have I lost you?
Oh, no, I'm here.
In there. Okay. So I just, I think they have made themselves not popular. And the good Roy Cooper is doing a great job, but he's helped by a guy named Michael Whatley. They have managed to make themselves, the Republicans. Americans are waking up to how damaging they are.
I think Republicans are sinking themselves, in every way. I think you're right, because it's hard right now to see the to see what they're doing is actually trying to help fulfill the campaign promises that they ran on. And I think that Donald Trump, especially, his main campaign focus was lowering prices for people. And I was just out knocking doors today, and folks were talking to me about the main issues that they had were housing affordability, being able to afford rent while they have it. And then also I talked to a lot of unaffiliated, 27 to 30-year-olds who were living at home with their parents still, honestly, because they were like, I cannot afford to live on my own right now and be able to make ends meet. And I think that's the reality of just so many people, especially that like missing middle of voters that we're not seeing come to the polls right now, because we're not talking about a lot of those issues. And I think the Democrats have really flipped the script on that this year. And that's what we see Roy Cooper talking about. That's what we see John Ossoff talking about. That's what we see a lot of the Sherrod Brown right in Ohio, honestly. I just think that the candidates that are really focusing on a message of what voters need to hear, because they also know that that's what voters want our government to actually focus on. And Michael Whatley is running against Roy Cooper. And for those of you that don't know him, Michael Whatley was one of the lawyers that was a proponent of the Keystone XL pipeline that was trying to take away indigenous land, and also is an oil lobbyist. And so not necessarily somebody that I want to take on big corporations and special interest groups in Washington, D.C. that already have too much hold and power in that office already, from what I can tell, at least by what we've seen coming out of the Trump administration. Billionaires have gotten their fair share and their fair cut from all of this. I think it's finally time that the average person did too. And that's what I think we're going to see when we send Roy Cooper to the U.S. Senate.
So let's zoom out for a second. When you look at how Americans feel about political parties, they don't love our party, Anderson. They just don't. The brand has been tarnished from years of Republican smears and, frankly, some of our own mistakes. And now we're in the process in this primary cycle of changing what we talk about, what we mean to people. And it's a change, from my perspective, it's a change from the era of let's make a deal in Congress, like that's what we're going there to do, to let's get stuff done for people. And there's also a generational change happening at the same time. So I wonder if you could talk about where you see the future of the Democratic Party. Who are we? When the country says, well, we don't know who they are, we think they only care about bathrooms, right? Because the Republicans say weird stuff about us. Who are the Democrats, and how do we tell people this and get this message out?
The first framework that came to my mind is that we're your neighbors, because I think that what Democrats right now, at least what we're doing in North Carolina and what I see across the state, is that Democrats are really trying to rebuild community, and they're trying to. I was just talking to a guy earlier today who said that he was a precinct chair of mine, and he said one of the things that he had focused on was getting together like-minded people in his network and his neighborhood, and then the next thing they were going to do is they were going to start inviting folks that disagreed with them, that were unaffiliated, that were more moderate Republicans, and he said that he wanted to sort of bring in a group of people who could have a discussion about something and not hate each other when they got done with it. And I think all across the country right now, and what we're seeing is that the everyday American wants somebody who's going to speak to their needs and their interests and honestly want to solve problems, because we have seen government for so long be so inefficient by not solving the actual problem that's at hand. And instead of solving a problem, they're making everything about politics. And I think that we want problem solvers in office. And I always like to say that, we don't need more politicians. We need more public servants. And I think that that's what we're finally starting to see from a lot of the folks that are running, and also a lot of, to your point, the new generation of politics. They're people that they just really care about their communities rather than the flashy showiness of it. And there was actually a cool study done recently about young people, and they asked a survey of young folks, like, who would you want your life to be modeled around? And they gave like a series of influencers and celebrities, and a lot of young people, majority of the young folks that took the survey had said that actually they wanted their lives to be more private, that they didn't actually celebrity claim. They didn't want to be a celebrity. They didn't want that sort of fame. And I think it's reflective right now of how much we have made politics about popularity and also about like celebrityism in some way instead of about what it's actually meant to be. You know, public service is meant to be hard. It's not supposed to be something that's easy. And I think so much we've gotten away from that point, and people want to see folks that just care about them again in office.
Do the work
Yeah.
and do the work. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always thought the politicians I loved struck me as ambitious, not to be, but ambitious to do, you know,
Yeah.
right. They didn't want the title. They wanted the impact.
Yeah, AOC, I think, said it recently on a panel that she did, right? She was David Axelrod. She was talking about how she said that, you know, it's funny to her that people think that she's ambitious for a title, and she said, no, I'm ambitious for a cause. Like I want to do something. And then I thought that was the best thing that she could have ever said. And it was something that I always think about in this job too, is that it's not about like, you don't have a title doesn't give you purpose, you know, only you can do that. And I think that's what I'm hoping the average person across America is finding out right now too about their power in politics, is that, you know, you have a lot of purpose, and that's what Republicans right now are afraid of, is folks recognizing it.
Yeah. I mean, across the country, Democrats or you know, people who are on our side but who aren't doing the work that you're doing are afraid that the president is going to try and cheat. And you know, I think he might try and cheat, but I think overwhelming turnout makes it impossible for him to get away with it. And I think about Hungary. That wasn't a free and fair election, and yet the people won it.
Well, and also just to make some listeners feel better, most of every battleground state that decides the presidential election, the elections are controlled by Democrats. And so Democrats care about free and fair elections and making sure that ballots that are properly cast are also properly counted. And so the state that right now you should be concerned with is North Carolina, because we are one of the only battleground states where Republicans do control our elections. And we have gone through a Republican election denialism before in 2024 when Republicans tried to come in and retroactively throw out 68,000 ballots from the 2024 election.
Court race. Yeah.
And so I want folks to walk away feeling good that North Carolina has beat Republican extremism and election denialism before, and we will do it again in 26 if we have to, and in 28 as well. But we cannot properly count any vote that's not cast. And I want to make sure that folks feel good about going to a ballot box this year, because I want to flood the zone, y'all, with people and make sure that this administration hears us on the ground.
You know, Anderson, the way you talk about the work that you do, it is gonna. I mean, I want to play this conversation to people in 50 states, whether they have any connection in North Carolina or not, because it gives people the kind of focus, energy, and hope they need to get through this cycle and to see the other side of this moment in our history.
I mean, I think the South is really, this sounds weird, but I think we were really well prepared to go through another Trump administration, because we have been through Project 2025 for the last 65 years here in the South. And in some ways we are used to, right, Republicans trying to suppress the vote, Republicans trying to defund education, Republicans trying to disenfranchise voters and target specific groups of people. And I think that what we have managed to do here in North Carolina, and also I'm hoping across the South, is create partnerships with organizations and good civic-minded groups that care about just the enfranchisement of being able to vote. And something that we're working on is making sure that we've got the voter protection operation in place too, because we fully know that Donald Trump and his federal government are going to send people to polling locations this year, that we're going to have ICE at certain places in North Carolina, and we already have right throughout this year. So we're making plans and we're here to execute. And I think that the reality of that is just making sure that you have and that you're involved with those plans, because the number one way to make you feel better when you're in the chaos right now is to put your hand stand on something. And so if you're in North Carolina, I hope you're getting involved by going to ncdp.org. But if you're in another state, I hope that you are getting involved with a local group somewhere around you that's, helping poll watch or do something outside of polling locations, or also you're helping out a candidate this cycle, that you're doing something and that you're looking locally to do it, because the most amount of impact that you're going to have is at the local level this year.
Yes. And Republicans figured that out decades ago, and they've been weaponizing their local power against us, from school boards to governor's offices in every state, and certainly in the way they have gerrymandered the state legislatures. So, Anderson, I couldn't agree with you more. If we win back the states, if we focus on, or even just, mayors, if we focus on this, we rebuild community, and strong communities are immune to the kind of lying, divisive nonsense, because we see in our daily lives what it means. So focus where you are.
We also rebuild a bench for our party, right? We want to make sure that the folks that are going up to a state legislature understand what cities are having to go through right now with healthcare cuts, and that they know what their budgets look like, and that we want people that are going to Congress to have understood what it's like to have been in a state legislature. And I think the experience of being able to know what it's like at a local level to do a lot with a little is also really important for some of the folks right now in Congress that, we could consider are wasting taxpayer dollars on unnecessary wars and fights that they don't actually need to have right now. And I think that a lot of local governments would be able to come in and shape up a congressional budget any day of their lives too, just because it's really hard right now on the ground to do what they need to do.
Well, okay. So this is going to bring me right back to the beginning of our conversation, because for all of those reasons, that experience, that visibility into what's happening on the ground in a place, Roy Cooper is going to be a terrific United States Senator.
Yeah, I mean, he's also going to put the importance. One thing that we've seen this year across the state is that Governor Cooper has put an extreme amount of emphasis on our state Supreme Court as well, because he understands what it's like to have unfriendly courts when you're a governor. Like, our state legislature stripped more powers away from Roy Cooper as governor in North Carolina than they did any other Democrat governor in state history. And part of that was because Roy Cooper was such a successful governor in North Carolina. And so I think that what we know is that Republicans are willing to wield power in every way, shape, and form in order to keep it, and Democrats have got to have control of the levers of power that are able to actually equalize it. And so for us, it is focusing on the courts. It's focusing on our congressional races this year. We have two really important congressional seats, one that we've got to hold in NC01 with Don Davis, and then also NC11 with Jamie Ager. Jamie Ager is a farmer. He runs Hickory Nut Gap Farms out in Asheville in western North Carolina, and he is somebody who is just an incredible candidate that we've got this year, who, to your point earlier, Edwin, about the illegal tariffs, I mean, he is just seeing how much the small farmers and also the beef industry in general this year has been ravaged by tariffs all across our state and all across the country.
Yep. Well, Anderson, I can't thank you enough for spending some time with those of us, by the Great Lakes while you're in those beautiful mountains, and for the work that you're doing every day. Just it's lifting people in North Carolina, but it's lifting people all over the country.
Well, look, thank you for taking some time to highlight it. North Carolina is going to give some real power back to the nation, and I'm excited about it this year. We're going to make sure we get Roy Cooper over the line and Anita Earls, too. And if you're out there, go to ncdp.org. Get involved with us today.
I think that is a brilliant idea. Thanks, Anderson. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Evan.